Hi, Dr. David.
That's it?
Yes, I
Okay.
know. I know Scott goes through this whole thing, but this is my 5th webinar, and I always just let people
You're
kind of
over
talk.
it. All
Well,
right.
I
It
just
is
always
over.
let people introduce themselves because they do a better job. So this is my
Oh,
colleague, Dr. David Fawcett.
yep.
I love working with him at the Seeking Integrity
Oh,
Treatment Program. He
that's
does
more
an
like it.
amazing job with his Lust, Men, and Meth book, and I'm really excited because he's writing another one that really is about co-occurring chemical addiction and sex addiction in a more general way. So it isn't just meth. I mean, this stuff affects everybody. Before we hit record, I started talking about, because I was, blathering on before people joined, before Dr. David joined. And I said, I always refer to your webinars and things when people are concerned about coming to treatment and have to, we are a non-smoke, non-vape facility, but I always go listen to Dr. David, because when he talks about this, your chance of relapse is significantly greater if you continue to keep cigarettes. So it's really important to understand this. And anytime I have a question about chemical stuff, Dr. David is my go-to person because I don't know and he does. So how's that?
That was great, Tammy. Thank you. That's terrific. And I don't have much more to add to that except to show my book, Lust, Men, and Meth, which,
Yes.
if you don't know it, you should. And as Tammy mentioned, I'm really excited to be in the middle of this other book, actually more toward the end of it now, that's going to really deal with the idea of co-occurring drug and sex addiction, whether you're male or female or gay or straight or the whole thing. And also, by the way, expanding what we think of as co-occurring. A lot of people think of amphetamines clearly, but probably alcohol is the single biggest one we see, and marijuana, and there's other things as well that are important to talk about. So I'm excited about
Well,
that.
and I think since cannabis has been legalized in more states, people now go, oh, it's not an issue. And,
Yeah.
when I'm talking to people about coming into the program, and I find out they're drinking alcohol, my radar always goes up, because they are more likely to end up in a detox center before they come to us, because alcohol is a scary one to detox from. So
Yeah.
we are not a detox center, so we don't do that work. So we always want people to be in a safe place. So when people think, oh, it's just cannabis and it's alcohol, and they're legal, and I'm over 18, I can buy this stuff, or over 21, I guess 21 now in most states. You can tell I've been sober a while, can't you?
I remember.
It
Yeah,
was 18, so
I remember those days too. That's how I got started.
there you go.
Okay, and speaking of letting go of stuff, that's kind of what I want to talk about tonight, letting go. And the process of letting go, and kind of why we have trouble with it, and maybe some practical steps to help us let go of whatever it is, whether it's addictive behavior or a relationship that is long overdue to be let go of, or bad habits, whatever they are. And I love this quote to start. Almost everything in my life that I've had to let go of has scratch marks on it, which means basically,
Wow,
and
that's
we
a
do,
great.
we hang on to stuff in a big way that makes it really hard to let go. So I think that's just a really perfect summary. But I want to talk about why we resist letting go of things, even though they may be really bad for us, like our addictive behaviors. They're creating unmanageability. They're keeping us stuck. We often get involved with things that we can't control, that causes us a lot of heartache, causes us a lot of frustration. And so, yet despite that, we hang on to these things, and we're very reluctant to let them go. So we've attached these things that help us we need to feel good. It gives us an emotional pleasure sometimes, but it's really not happiness. And I think we confuse sometimes those things to equate with happiness, and that's perhaps why we're reluctant to let it go. We think we're going to be unhappy, when in fact the reality is oftentimes when we can let go of it, there's a lot of relief, because we really can see, perhaps for the first time, the strain and the how those things really keep us in place. They keep us locked in place and frustrated. But we have this great fear: what's going to happen if I do let go? And I think that comes down to even addiction. Myself, when I got in recovery, said, who am I if I'm not, without my addiction? What's in there? I had really kind of no idea. I was a little afraid of that too. And I think when these addictions get so entangled and wrapped up in our lives, and so central to our identity in many ways, it's really hard to kind of imagine what our lives would look like without them. And I can attest, and I'll speak for Tammy. She can attest. Our lives look a lot better without them, miraculously better. But boy, it's hard to see that sometimes. There's a real fear of, like, there's not going to be much in there, or what's left is not going to be very likable or incapable of being happy. And so I think it's really important to kind of fight the the urges, the self-talk that we do. So, and really start to let it go. So a couple practical steps I find helpful for letting go of things. First is we need to really stop blaming other people for it. I think one of the reasons we get locked in is it's so comfortable sometimes to be a victim, to sort of see, and people are doing this to us, or circumstances have done this to us, and that kind of poor me that we have all these misfortunes, and we easily fall into that victim role, which is really, of course, the opposite of taking responsibility. And you know, do bad things happen to us? Yes, they do, and sometimes it makes sense to be victimized. But if we get stuck in that spot, it's an absolutely powerless spot that just only leads to, in my case at least, self-medicating. And I think it's really, and blaming, and just kind of being very unhappy and unable to kind of see how I move. I was reviewing with a client today the wonderful, it's called Cartman triangle, or victim triangle, or the drama triangle, but it's basically that thing where we there's three roles. We rescue someone because we want to make them feel better, or we want to do a favor, or we want to be liked. And then if we don't get properly acknowledged, we feel like we're a victim. Maybe we're taken advantage of, we overextended ourselves and we didn't get enough back, and blah, blah, blah. And then the third piece is we get angry, we get a resentment. We become, in the model, they call it a persecutor, but we lash out because, you know, we put ourselves in this position of overextending, feel bad we didn't get what we expected, and then we get angry. And then we go around in that circle and get trapped there as addicts. So bottom line, I think really stop blaming others and take responsibility for our happiness, you know, and not to wait for it, not to wait for others to fix you, not to wait for anything to be fixed. And with an active addiction or addictions in your life, you certainly can start to see this downward progression, I think, and I think ironically, as I was kind of heading toward hitting bottom with my own addiction, I grasped even harder to the things that I shouldn't be letting go of, because that was all I knew, really. So the next thing sounds kind of obvious, but I think it's really important. And that's really to make a decision to let it go. And for those of you who've been around the steps, that's kind of reminiscent of a certain step that we know, where we make a decision to turn our life over. And so I think it's really important to consciously say, I'm going to do this. And I even tell my clients to write it down and put it on your mirror, or put it in your desk, or somewhere where you're going to see it. You know, I am going to quit smoking, or I'm going to stop porn, or whatever it is. And of course, it takes a lot more actions than that, but it's really important to not do it half-heartedly. I think so many of us, and that's part of the discouraging thing, we kind of make a half-hearted attempt and it doesn't work, and then we feel bad and we kind of go back, and then we have this kind of repeated pattern of failure and relapse that's just very discouraging and disheartening after a while. I think to really sit down and make a conscious decision. Yeah, I'm going to let go of, you know, XYZ because it's no longer serving me. And then the third thing, and this is maybe a harder one, is to really trust that you're going to be okay. At some point, we have to do a leap of faith that, yeah, I can let go of this, and guess what? I'll be fine. And it helped me to have some basic skills and program when I could really start to trust that I would. But with all of us in recovery, or anything where we're having to let go, someone once used this metaphor of a trapeze, and I love it, where we're on a trapeze, and at some point we have to let go, and we're out there in the middle of the air, hoping this other trapeze is going to be up there to meet us and bring us to safety, right? And I think many times it feels like that we're up, and we have to kind of at some point take it on faith. And if we take the right action, we will be okay. But I think that's really important. But that trust is really incredible, and we have to use our supports. We never can do this alone. But we have to really know that, first of all, we don't need those habits to survive. And I think at some level, we go with this life and death thing that if I don't have that, I'm going to somehow die, because those old addictive habits have gotten all wrapped up in past unmet needs and past trauma and that kind of thing. So yeah, then two more things, I should say. Learn the lesson and then move on. So when we refuse to let go of something, it's because we refuse to see what life is trying to teach us. And that's been the lesson of my addictions as well, or anything I've let go of. If the longer I hang on to it, the longer it goes until I get the lesson that it's trying to teach me. And I always, if I can let go of something that's not serving me anymore, there's always a gift in there for me, and I trust for everyone, where we can learn something. There's a lesson there. And we can learn, if nothing else, that we are self-sufficient. We might be able to get by on something, or that we can trust people, or that maybe we can be different people than we thought we were, and that we don't need this habit or drug or whatever it is. And then finally, I think just to really meditate or use mindfulness. And I think and by that I mean just bringing some consciousness to it, where we can really be awake and look at our habits and be aware and be self-aware and start to really gain clarity. But it also really is useful to calm ourselves. And we really need tools as we're letting go of these things that we believe have been, sometimes we need it for survival, sometimes just because it's could bring us happiness in air quotes. But I think meditation or mindfulness really does soothe us in a way that many of our addictive behaviors have done as well. So I'll stop talking there, but I just think that that idea of consciously letting go is just a huge process that we all need to face, probably multiple times.
Well, yeah, I was to say sometimes over and over again, maybe like I loved your analogy of the claw marks, as the scratch marks on it. And I was like, yeah, I mean, like I was talking, and I talked about this not too long ago too, about, in sex addiction in particular, I think it's very useful in all addictive recovery programs, but, we talk about inner circle, middle circle, and outer circle. And, thinking of the inner circle as the smallest circle, we're giving up the smallest piece, that isn't serving us well. And as we move into recovery, the largest circle, the stuff that is beneficial for us and all of that, that's where we find freedom. But we're so busy holding on to this, like you said, claw marks on it, going, oh no, I need this, even if it isn't serving us well. I do completely understand, the I don't know how I would live without this, because I have no coping skills. I don't. So the fear, like you said, the trapeze, like the fear of going like, yeah, there isn't another rope that I see. And, so I'm going to hang on to this and just swing back and forth, not going anywhere, but I'm going to do that. One of my favorite spots in movies, I'm not like one of those that can quote all the movies, but when Indiana Jones, when he's standing there, at the ledge, and he's got to, and like it's visible, he's like, do I do this? And he takes a step, and then the sidewalk, or the pathway appears, and then he throws rocks on it because then he can see it better. But he had to take that first step,
Great. I love that.
just to go, okay. And I feel like, I mean, that's, we talk about the 12 steps. We have to take that first step. That is a complete leap of faith, because all the stuff that we've learned to do maladaptive haven't worked. And we have to, for me, it was really trusting that the people that said, we have figured out a way to do this, trust us, you can do this too, so really the trust, yes, but also the support. I absolutely, I didn't know how to do any of life,
Yeah, me too.
and life happens to everybody, like everybody is dealing with a COVID world. I mean, who saw that coming? But, it's one of those things where just because we get into recovery, it doesn't all magically, become wonderful and all my problems are going to go away. Or, like we talk about a lot, you put away the alcohol and chemicals and nobody addressed the sex addiction piece, and guess what happens? Like all of a sudden relapse is happening and nobody knows what happened because gosh, I was sober, and so we really have to be willing to look at all the things that are not serving us well. So
right. Totally.
Yeah. So we have a question. Hello, Dr. David and Tammy. SA here in relationship with D-Day was on just last, interestingly, it was on my sobriety birthday, but it was 11/18 of 20. So I've been feeling more and more defeated, hopeless as time goes by. My relationship and my recovery has been at odds with one another since D-Day. My partner and I speak all throughout the day on heavy topics, get into emotionally intense conversations, and things get pretty ugly. I try to be empathetic and compassionate as I can to the trauma I have caused her. She will not agree to a conflict resolution agreement and is not interested in safe harbor or therapeutic separation. I feel like I'm at the brink of a mental breakdown. She has a CSAT and has gone to some group meetings, but is resentful. Please help.
Wow. Well, sorry about that situation. It's not that uncommon either. And it's relatively early, I would say also. It's 6 weeks ago or something, or 2 months. since
months, yeah, but
since
it's very early,
yeah.
yeah.
But there's a lot of still feelings probably coming up, and a lot of not knowing quite what to do with those, and so yeah, I mean, your wife is there in a tricky spot, your partner, and so I think I just would say hopefully that both of you can get the professional guidance you need, and that she has a process that she can go through to start doing some of this, because I guarantee she's not very happy in that spot either. She's experiencing a lot of anger, and then that stuck place that we were talking about before. I think couples can get into that where there's a lot of angry feelings, and people don't know quite what to do with it, despite even some goodwill about it. There's this feels like an overwhelming burden of anger and distrust and hurt and pain. So I think I would perhaps encourage you to really keep your heavy conversations in a boundaried way, where you might want to do that, half an hour a day or an hour a day, and sit down and really contribute to each other and sit there and really focus and get connected and talk about it, and maybe not let it spill over during the rest of the day. Because when I hear that, what I think of is kind of unfinished arguments and business and complaints and hard feelings and silence, and then more. It just kind of never goes anywhere, except it's a churning of a lot of the emotions. So one, I would try to guide those conversations into a professional environment where you can get some coaching and some assistance from someone, but also really to kind of compartmentalize. I know we don't like that word sometimes, but compartmentalize that conversation to a certain time of day, and so the rest of the day isn't kind of spoiled by all that, because I think it sounds like it's kind of taken over everything. So it's of course, it's a big process, and it is a process, but I don't like to hear anybody say they're at the brink of a mental breakdown. I think, I guess, hopefully your wife will understand or try to agree to some of these steps where that can be a pathway to healing. Because right now, it doesn't seem like there's any avenue toward that that she's willing to participate in. I think it's really have to come down to the willingness on her part and patience on yours, at least for now, because I think it is early. I would continue to take care of you, and remember, if you were here for the beginning of this webinar tonight, letting go. What do I have power of? The Serenity Prayer is very useful for that. What can I control? And in many ways, you can't control her reaction. You can control how you react to her, to the situation. You can manage your own recovery. You can take care of yourself. But she's in many ways in her own process right now, and I hope she can feel comfortable in that, to kind of find some pathway to recovery, whether it's through a separation or some kind of agreement, or some even dialogue. I think would really help. I feel you guys, obviously, you may have even said the word, it feels stuck. And I think we need to get some movement there toward healing.
And I echo Dr. David's comment. It is early. It feels like it's perpetual, and I'm sorry for both of you. It is a very painful place to be in. I hear she has a CSAT. I didn't hear that you do. I hope you are working with a qualified therapist. I echo also, I've shared in other groups, having a finite time where this is the safe time, that this is all we're going to do is talk about our relationships and things like that. I think 20 minutes, and if it's every day or 3 times a week or whatever, but this is when we talk about this, and then we're both going to go get support, to decompress and all that. But it can't feel good for her, even though she's angry. So I've done a lot of webinars this week. Troy Love on his today. I don't know if it's posted. I'll check in a minute. But we talked about that specifically, the burpees, and one is the blaming, and then like there's this whole negative cycle. So it does take somebody stepping out. And Dr. David just talked about the Cartman drama triangle, and I've been in the demonstrations of that, and it's a dance. It's a dance. You do this, then I do this, and then you do this, and then I do this, and we can be in different roles. It isn't that I'm always the victim and you're always the perpetrator or whatever, or I'm always the rescuer. It's like we, depending on the situation, it goes around, and it takes going, we're tired of doing this dance.
Right.
This is not serving either of us well. She may feel better in the moment because she's, attacking you. But at the end of the day, I hear this often from partners is, I'm becoming something I don't want to be. And so getting her support for her so that she can, we have a betrayed partner group tomorrow morning at 8:30 a.m. Pacific time. And so there's a number of them every week on sexandrelationshiphealing.com. But having a safe place where you can go, rare, if you need to, and other partners are going to go, yes, I understand. And there is hope, but I really, hang in there, get what you need for support, at the brink of a mental breakdown. You need more support. Clearly, you need more support. So I'm thrilled you're here. You can always email me, Tammy at seekingintegrity.com, TAMI, at seekingintegrity.com. If you are looking for a qualified therapist, let me know where you're located. There's a men's group tomorrow. There's another. In fact, Troy Love does the Friday attachment wounds group on Friday morning. Yeah, great, great. Yes, great resources. I can give you lots of resources and things to help hold the space. You guys still have to do the heavy lifting, but I think that there are ways to set it up and just say, I want to hear you. This feels futile. So how can we do this so that I can hear you? But we each get the support we need to move things forward. So
I really want to underscore something Tammy said, and that's to really try to see if your wife would be willing to join a partners group of some kind, or even attend a partners webinar where she could hear other partners who've been in the same position and get feedback from them. Because I think in my experience, people accept and hear things that a peer says much sooner than they do their own husband or wife or therapist sometimes. I think that would be an important perspective for her to get.
Yeah, and for you, you're early in the process. If you haven't already done so, the Sex and Porn Addiction 101 work group is we're going to have one for women, but it's just for men. The next one starts next week, February 3rd, 90 minutes of processing through in a supportive environment, facilitated, 6 weeks, 90 minutes. That's on seekingintegrity.com, but the guys, we would had level 1 and had level 2, and the guys were finding it so supportive and useful that they asked for a level 3, and we created that. So it is a meaningful part of the process, and I think you would find some support and guidance for you. But really encourage, and part of it is just weathering the storm. We talk, partners are always behind because trust has been delayed, so they're always a lot of time behind the person who's in recovery, who's getting the support and getting the tools to live life differently. And so Anyway, hang in there. Glad you're here. Next question. Thank you for being here to answer our questions. My husband had a relapse when we were about to have a disclosure in 2 weeks. I hear that often. It's very triggering. So he was lying to his therapist, his 12-step group, and of course me. I found it out by accident. I was not snooping or controlling. I had decided to trust him and trust my HP, and had just found a little piece on that. He had been doing it for a while. I feel devastated, understandably. He told me he can't do it, that nobody is helping him, and he left. He has been in touch with my kids, but no word to me. He blocked his he blocked his Find My iPhone app, so I don't know where he is. He said it like he is two different people. I guess my question is it possible? Is he making this all up? Is it true for addicts to feel that he is two different persons, or that he has a different problem? Also, why do you think he is avoiding me? So I'm going to read these and we'll pick through them. Why do you think he's avoiding me? Is it shame, or is he gave up on us? Should I wait? Ask him, file for divorce? Long question. So let's go back to my question is it possible? Is he making all this up? Do addicts feel like they're two different people?
Yeah, so first of all, I'm really sorry for what you're going through, because that's a really painful thing, especially if you just started to try to put some little trust and find that peace, and then to have the rug pulled out from under you again is a bad situation. I'm sorry you're going through that. What you're describing, though, is not so unusual, I think, for somebody who is in relapse mode. I think there's often this kind of Jekyll and Hyde quality to addiction, and when people are in their acting out behavior, especially sex addicts, they really do become different people in terms of losing some of that empathy and the disconnect and feeling like a victim. We'd spoken about earlier. I hear some of your husband doing that here too. Nobody's helping him, and kind of feeling sorry for himself a little bit. But I think, like Tammy said at the beginning, when we are doing a fourth step in the process, when we're doing disclosure, all these things require pretty intense personal inventory of what what we've done, what we have, and it's terrifying. And because you're really revealing what's gone on. And there's often always a lot of fear about what will happen, and disclosure, and there's shame. There's just a whole storm of feelings. And so this does happen, and people retreat. And I don't know your husband, but I would bet what I'm feeling is a lot of shame going on here on his part, and shame turning into victim. Yeah, nobody's helping me. I can't do this. Nobody can do it. That kind of those statements. When I hear that sort of stuff, the always nevers, I just feel people are kind of back in their addictive headspace, rationalizing, denial, a lot of that stuff. So I do hope he's getting help, and has he must have done some work in terms of connecting on his way to disclosure, I hope. But I do hope that he's on his way to that. But I think this change in behavior is not that surprising to me, with the kind of two different people, and then who are we dealing with. And I do think the avoidance piece is really probably more about shame, and perhaps a little bit of it's not unusual for one party to kind of punish the other. I think, like, go silent, and you don't know what's happening to me, or what's going on. I think that's a little bit of that too sometimes, perhaps. I do hope he's not acting out. I hope he's not really getting in trouble out there, but he's kind of taking some time to deal with his feelings in a more constructive way. But yeah, I think at this point would not make any decisions about a divorce. Certainly, it's not a time to make those choices. I think when you do come back together, in whatever form that is, I think it's important for you to have thought about some boundaries for you, and that divorce may be something that's there. But I think in the middle of this, and I'd call it a crisis, I don't think it's a good time to decide on a divorce or not. I think it's something to consider in terms of boundaries when you re-engage with each other. But I wouldn't make a decision like that now, unless things continue to really change, and there's then no connection at all. Then maybe that's more on the table.
So I have a whole lot I'm thinking about with this one. Please, please, please protect your children. They do not need to be in the middle of this. I'm not hearing you say that you are. I hear he's been in touch with the kids. So, I'm hopeful that that can be preserved. I'm less optimistic than Dr. David, about him acting out. This sounds like classic relapse, where, yes, shame, but he's been, and he knows he's been lying to his therapist. He's been lying to you. He's been lying to himself,
Right.
so, all of that, and you're not controlling or snooping. You're, even if you're finding something, whether you stumbled across it or whatever, you're looking for safety. So, of course, you're hopeful that he's, doing well, and you're headed to disclosure, and that will be a foundation, to move forward. I hear that you're going, like, I thought things were going good, and found a little peace. So I am sorry, and I understand the devastation. I'm sad for him that he can't do it, because what we were talking about earlier, the clawing on the smallest part of, I want to hang on to this, no matter what. And here he is, separated from you, who clearly love him. He's separated from his kids, because texting or whatever with kids is not the same as being in the same house and being connected with them. So the compassionate part of me wonders if there's a piece of you that could have a message, text him a message and just say, I know how difficult this is for you. I want to support you in healing, and you kind of leave it at that. Not to let him off the hook at all, but, like, I hear that you're concerned about him, and just, I don't know if there's a place for you that you feel like you could do that. Dr. Rob wrote the book Codependence, and it talks about loving someone who's broken. You love someone who's broken, and he's the father of your children, and regardless of whether you stay together or not, you will co-parent, you will co-grandparent. So navigating a relationship, even if you divorce, is imperative for your children and your grandchildren. So get support for you. I mentioned the betrayed partner groups and things like that. Please, 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 thrilled you're here. Please find support for you. But yeah, addicts, like in our active addiction, we are Jekyll and Hyde. We are disconnected, dissociated pieces. We compartmentalize things and pretend like, oh, my behavior doesn't matter to anybody else. And, or this is really, the blame shifting is nobody understands me. It's everybody else's fault rather than, I'm struggling and there are resources. He's working with a therapist. He had resources and he's going, so.
Yeah.
Okay, so next one, thank you both for your answer. Grateful for the webinars. The first question does have a CSAT and finds that helpful. So yes, keep leaning in, get more support. Like I said, the drop-in groups and things I think you'll find really helpful too. Next question. Regarding the first question, I'm a partner and can relate. Her entire world has been totally destroyed. To ask her to talk about it and feel her pain for only, oh, no, that's not what I said. And feel her pain for only 20 minutes. No. And shut it off the rest of the day. Nope, that was not what I said. But I had one person that reached out, and from 8 p.m. till 4 a.m., it was nonstop. No person, I don't think can really, you can't even take all of that in. So I am not at all saying, turn off the feelings and everything else, but it's okay to write, journal and go, these are how I'm feeling, whatever. But to have it be an ongoing where it's going to come out of the blue for either of you, all day long it's destructive for the partner, as well too. So I'm sorry. Thank you for bringing that up. That is not what I meant. Talking about it for 20 minutes in a contained, this is a safe space. We're going to talk about it. I'm going to take it in. I'm going to think about it. We can, if I need to reflect and come back, we can do that at the next time together. But when it's 24/7 and you don't, I've had people that have woken their partner up to go, there's just no break, for either of you. So I'm saying get support as a partner, get support from other partners. Come together when you can have a safe space where you go, this is 20 minutes. We're going to talk about our relationships, the good, the bad, the ugly, and then we're going to take that in. We're going to go get our support and we're going to do it again. So that hopefully that clarifies, but of course you're, the pain is, but get support elsewhere. Don't,
Right.
Don't keep making the relationship. I just feel like that's an ongoing boxing match,
Yeah, I agree with Tammy, and I think it's good to kind of put a boundary around those tough conversations between the two of you, but then the rest of the time you absolutely need to be processing, but not with your partner. I would suggest the partner, we talk about news, weather, sports, and our clients call their wives or husbands at home, but I think the rest of the time, that's why it's so important to have a really robust support system, a support network, so you can reach out and connect with people and get perspective and share your feelings and just have a good cry or have a good laugh or whatever you need to do. But yeah, I think we've made the point, but yeah.
Yeah, well, and the other thing is, and in this case, his and her, so his addiction is taking over all aspects of everyone's life 24/7. Everybody needs a break, like you just, whether it's, a cup of coffee with a friend and you don't talk about, you talk about, college or jokes or whatever, find something that is a safe space, because yeah, the torment is horrible, and I do not mean to demean or dismiss that at all. So okay, so next question. Thank you, Tammy and Dr. David. I was wondering what is the balance between what I consider deal breaker behaviors. Oh, that's a good question. And my husband's inner circle behaviors. He has shared some of his inner behaviors with me, and as part of my impact letter, I've asked for things I need to feel safe, though I'd like to know, do my deal breakers become his inner circle? For example, I have asked he not text other women unless he tells or includes me. What expectations are fair for him regarding honesty? 24-hour rule for my deal breakers. That's a great question.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of overlap between those kind of deal breakers and the inner circle. And in fact, there's pretty darn close, I would say, because those kind of things, and we always get input from the partners in terms of what those boundaries might be. But I think the addict has to choose, and they, by the way, as recovery happens, they can kind of shift perhaps somewhat. but we're looking at the first kind of critical period after discharge in our case. But I think those behaviors, yeah, absolutely, they're important to consider and include. And we share, at least I do with my clients and their wives, we share the circle plan so that we can be clear on what's there and everybody knows it's transparent. And I think the partner, if there's a strong feeling about something, that definitely is an impact that goes in there, and we talk about that. My philosophy in all these, at least in early recovery, is that if there's a question or a doubt, we kind of defer to the partner in terms of boundaries, in terms of where people are living, how soon they may initiate intimate contact, whether how much time you spend with the kids, whatever. That all kind of, I think, is the partner's kind of has significant weighted input in my view on that stuff. So I think definitely there's a lot of overlap that really needs to show up in the inner circle because that's critically important. For 24-hour rule. Yeah, I think, Tammy, do you have anything to add on that?
Well, I'm glad it's the 24-hour rule for honesty, because I've seen, we had a former client that was at the treatment, and we addicts lie, and it doesn't get fixed even in our wonderful treatment program. They're still going to lie. We can't fix everything in 14 days, but and the partner absolutely demanded that lying be in the inner circle, and this client resets his sobriety date every single day, and that's torture, I think, for both of them. There's no progress. So the 24-hour rule. So the thing with a deal breaker, I think the thing to think about is, if he slips with this one time, because if it's a deal breaker, it's a deal breaker. If he slips with it one time and he doesn't tell you for 26 hours, is he out the door? I mean, I love that you're asking the questions. I think be really clear on what the deal breakers are for you, instructing this, and because if you don't hold your word on what a deal breaker is, yeah, we addicts are manipulative, and we'll push those little lines. And you said 24 hours, but what about 24 hours and 30 minutes? So I mean, honestly, it's like we're like 2-year-olds on some level. So be really clear for you. I would invite you to get some input from hopefully a professional, but other partners too. But be thinking about that is, I mean, I think it's completely fair that he not text other women. That would be, that is fair. Again, if he texts one woman without telling you, and that's a deal breaker, are you willing, to kick him out? So whatever you pick as your deal breakers, be clear that that is the line in the sand, and there's no wiggle room.
Yeah, totally. And I think, and what Tammy said, just to underline it too, is that we really need to be willing to follow through on those boundaries, because that's really critical. So you want to be careful about what you declare as a boundary.
Yeah. So John Taylor on a webinar, and this was a while back, but he did one on negotiation. And I think, I agree, defer to the partner, but I think, having the addict understand where you're coming from, like, I'm really concerned. It makes me feel unsafe if you're texting other women. That's really important to me that that you have that as an inner circle. I think understanding your point of view and why you are asking for those things, and what about it would help you feel safe, and why you perceive it as a deal breaker, like that you feel that strongly about it. I think that's really important to do. But navigating it, and I'm not saying he gets to negotiate, through things, but navigating it so that you're clear on what the expectations are and why it's important to you. That to me would be the most important, is why is this so important to you? So that he's got real clarity on, on where you stand.
Perfect. Yeah.
Other questions? There's no other questions in the Q&A. So
we usually have more than we can answer.
I know. So
come on, folks, we're here.
So I'm gonna plug a few things. So Dr. David has a podcast series, and Dr. Rob does. Between the two of them, and all the podcasts, I think it's around 650,000 downloads now on the various series. So if you haven't checked those out, please do. on sexandrelationshiphealing.com. You'll see them under the podcast tab. I mentioned the work groups earlier. We've got another work group for men starting next week, February 3rd. So please check that out. That's on seekingintegrity.com. And
And
Dr.
if I can
David,
plug my
please.
own,
I was just
uh,
gonna, yeah.
starting Saturday, I have a 4-part series on co-occurring drug and sexual behavior that really covers everything from the brain science to the fusion of sex and drugs and some of the principles for recovery. It's 4 parts, 90 minutes each, for 4 weeks, starting this Saturday afternoon. We've had a lot of interest from Europe, so we tried to make it accessible to folks in that time zone. So, but anyway, please check it out. Also, it's seekingintegrity.com.
Yes, and that the last one you did was a small group, and they really had the opportunity to, interact with you and ask questions and things. So
Yeah.
so I think, I think it's really valuable, and that is different than and can co-occur with the Sex and Porn Addiction 101 work group. We also have a couples work group that started in January. We will be offering that again in April because that's going well. We used to have in person, and then COVID hit, so we aren't doing that anymore. But well, at least for now. So Susie LeBrock is hosting is facilitating a 6-part series online every Saturday morning. So we're going to offer that again starting in April. So watch for that. So you mentioned the intensive. Is it open? Yes, it is. Is there only a 2-week? So is it open during the, let me finish reading the question. You mentioned the intensive. Is it open with COVID pandemic? Is there only a 2-week program? So yes, it has been open. We've been an essential service. We have been open the entire during the entire pandemic. We have protocol in place. We have been full. We after this Saturday, right now, it's only Wednesday, but right now we have a couple of spots, but we've been full since last fall with the program. It's an 8-bed program. So for guys coming from outside the Los Angeles area, which we've had all over the country, we've had outside the country,
Whoa.
even during the pandemic. They fly into the LAX airport, are picked up by the staff, and are transported to the house, which is located in a nice residential neighborhood, a new construction home. It's nice and light and airy. I stayed there when we were setting it up before we had clients, and it's very nice. Most importantly about this program is Dr. David, Dr. Rob, are 2 PhD level clinicians who teach other therapists around the world are actually working with the clients directly. And then we've got 2 master's level clinicians. So it's expert treatment for treatment for clinicians providing treatment for no more than 8 guys at a time. Is it only a 2-week program? Not necessarily. So it's a minimum of 14 days. I'll be really honest, the guys that have it's only for men. The guys with co-occurring chemical addiction, they do better. I say this when people call, they do better with 21 or 28 days. But at the very minimum, clients must register for 14 days. They come on a Sunday and are with us until the second Saturday, whatever that is. So it's rolling, on Sundays. But expert treatment, I'm so proud of the clinical team. I had an alumni that had been with us last summer, I think. And he said, he reached out a couple weeks ago and he said, plain and simple, seeking integrity changed the trajectory of my life. And that just made me so proud. But he's on a very different path. So we don't fix everything in 14 days, but we can really put people on a solid path to healing.
I would say it's a small program, as Tammy just said, it's a really small program and highly personalized treatment with a lot of, intense staffing around the clock for people. So yeah, it's and I think we get an awful lot of people who have failed at other programs, and we are really unique. We treat a very small slice of addictive disorders, but we really do it well, and very well in fact. So
yeah, we're not a 100-bed program. We're not interns. It really is expert treatment, and I think you're right. We've had a number of clients who've been to any of the other programs, and the individualized attention, understanding the underlying issues, the acting out is a symptom. So if it's just stopping the symptoms, the behaviors, without addressing the underlying issues. They either relapse or they switch and go, okay, well, I'm not watching porn, but I'm smoking cannabis 24/7, I mean, so, and that doesn't, bring us happy, joyous, and free living either. So,
Certainly doesn't.
so if you want more information, I'm happy to answer the phone. I won't tonight, but answer the phone tomorrow. Email me, Tammy, TAMI at seekingintegrity.com. Happy to tell you more details. So, oh, this is awesome. One of our alum, it was life-changing, exclamation point. Dr. David and the team were so helpful, still sober. Y'all love you. And I've heard really good things from your therapist too. So congratulations. Keep doing it. Glad you're here. So, okay.
I'd say too, one of the things we do, because I happen to see that person, I did the alumni group this week. We have a fabulous alumni weekly meeting that is very popular, well attended, and it's incredible support where people can still make that contact directly. And I do it once a month. Dr. Rob does it once a month. There's a lot of staff interaction as well after you leave us. Your family.
I was gonna say, because you don't really leave us, we still want to be involved. So, okay. So I'm beginning to think that the only way my husband will get better is if I'm not around for him to blame all his problems on. How often does this prove true? Oh, he can still blame you even if you're not around, like, yeah, that's not being snarky. That is just, like, addicts in active addiction do not take responsibility. We can always find somebody to blame. So thoughts?
Yeah, it's true. I think I agree with that totally. And I would say, sometimes it is important to get some space between the two people just to get some insight and just space. And so there, with the help of a therapist, usually we can do, therapeutic separation or safe harbors or something like that, where there's a therapeutic guide to that separation. So it's not just time apart, come back, do the same old, but really use that time apart to explore, to feelings, to get some help, to build skills, and make it something useful before they come back together. So sometimes that space is very helpful. But I think if you're creating space in an effort to not be the focus of blame, that we can blame people that died 20 years ago. We can blame all kinds of people when we're in our disease. So but I think ultimately communication is going to be the way forward in terms of healing. But that takes some steps initially to create that opportunity for that. And I think sometimes there's some cooling off that needs to happen. And frankly, I think but rather just separation, it might be that your husband could benefit from a place like a treatment program where he can get away and get the help he needs. That's also a nice way of buying that space and really making it useful and productive. But I mean, the blame thing, that's a universal, and that'll happen no matter what, until some recovery sets in, because that's really one of the key defenses an addict has, to blame everybody else for everything that's going wrong. So,
yeah, like the other person said, I can't do this, nobody's helping me, it's always, well, it probably is always everyone else's fault, because gosh, I don't want to have to take a look at myself and my behavior and what I'm doing to myself and everyone else. So it's so I'm really sorry. What I would love, I'm glad you're here, I would love for you to find safe boundaries for you, and if that is a therapeutic separation, there are qualified professionals that can help guide you as to what that looks like. I often hear from people that go, we've been separated for 2.5 years and there's no real plan. So with a therapeutic separation, there is a plan. It's like, here's what we're going to do, here's the kind of a time frame, here's benchmarks for how we're going to come back together, what it would look like, what I would need for you to be safe for me to engage with again. So you're not alone. Unfortunately, there's, this is, too often the case, but there is support. So join the Betrayed Partners group tomorrow morning too. Okay, I'm a partner of an SA in recovery. I'm in the S&on group. How long would you suggest I continue in this group? We are doing very well with progress. I attend as many webinars as possible. I love hearing that. So I love hearing. In 12-step, we're told we have to go until we want to go. So for me, I go now because I want to go. but yeah, I'm thinking as long as you're finding it useful, if you're finding support and a break and learning things, yeah, the S-Anons, one of the challenges with AA or Al-Anon and all the Anons is partners, things get better and then they leave, and so the partners that are in there are often like the newbies that are coming in, and there's no one to guide them. So if you can be a light, you're showing hope, we're making progress, you being there and lending your support to somebody else, that would be really meaningful for me.
And I love the fact you say we are doing very well in our progress. And I think one of the reasons you're doing well is you're probably both actively engaged and support networks and your programs of support. So I would suggest not putting a timeline on it. It's not a 12-week program, a 24-week program, do it an S&on program or an Al-Anon program, but to really go because you're benefiting from it. And I think I at least for me as a recovering addict, I don't anticipate a time when I'll ever stop going. I think that would be disastrous for me. So even after many years of recovery. So I think I don't look at it as a kind of a finite thing. I look at it, and I agree with Tammy, because I get so much out of it still. Even after all these years, I get everything from fellowship to connection to a reminder that that could be me. And just so there's a lot to be gained from it. So I wouldn't put a time frame on it. I would just think of it as a resource that is going to be there for you, and that when I hear that things are going well, I guess I would really look at the formula that you guys are doing and not make changes in that right now. I think it's totally worth the investment of time to continue in that and keep that going well. I think one of the things I see is that people cut back as the equivalent of people taking a medication that controls their mood, for example, and they start to feel better, so they stop taking the medication, and then their mood collapses again. So I think it's important. This is it's like a dose of medication, if you will, for that's really helping. And so I'd be reluctant to make too many changes in that too. So.
And with 12 step, part of it is being of service to others, and like honestly, I'm truthful. You are a gift, when you can offer hope, because there's so many betrayed partners that are going, are in the thick of things and, going, does this ever get better? And you can go, yeah, yes, it can. And that, that's a gift. So, okay, next question. My husband has seen 4 therapists, 2 CSATs, lied to everybody. But I have to stop on this because right now my record is that one of our clients lied for 11 years to his therapist. So like, unfortunately, unfortunately we hear this often. So he lied to everyone. He can't figure out what is causing his addiction. He was not abused. He said during childhood was normal. Oh, you're gonna have to talk about that. And he thinks that figuring out why will help. Do you think they will do that in the intensive? Yes, he will. In our program, we do. He has even taken like 4 long tests and no answer to his questions. That's why he's saying nobody helps him.
Okay. So there's a bunch of stuff in here that I want to comment on. One, that the whole idea of why, I think that's a natural idea, especially if we tend to be kind of intellectual. We want to figure it out. And I know because that's familiar to me because I tried to do that too. I figured if I could just know the answer to why I was not a sex addict, I'm more of a drinker, but why I was so active in my addiction, if I could just get the answer to why that was happening, my behavior would stop. And I think it's kind of a misguided question. I think the why is interesting, and I'm curious about that always, but the first step is really stopping the behavior and getting the tools to deal with the addiction. The why is useful, but it's not the critical element in getting past to recovery, in my mind, because I've known many people, myself included, who kind of got a lot of answers, but it didn't really help me stop the behavior. Addiction takes on a life of its own. The whys may have caused it, may have been the seeds from which it grew, but after a while, it has its own momentum. And I think we have to recognize that and deal with that. That said, we hear this a lot, where childhood was normal because everybody's, and I do believe that trauma underlies a whole lot of addiction, if not all of it. But there's often trauma there. And I think when we think about that, we think of overt sexual abuse and physical beatings and that kind of stuff. It's really extreme. And of course, we do see that, and that's tragic. But for something like this, where it's kind of normal, and first of all, the more we talk about normal child, the more questions we ask, the more people realize maybe the childhood wasn't all that normal anyway. But one of the things I think it kind of causes a lot of addictive behavior and really results in trauma, where we see kind of this normal is neglect. And I think there's this neglect, and there's a wonderful book by Enid Gray called Neglect the Silent Abuser. Enid's a colleague of ours, fabulous book. And really what she talks about, and this is confusing for people because you may be someone who, you know, had food on the table and you got a car when you were 16 and went to college and took nice trips and had great clothes, and like how is that being neglected? But when we talk about neglecting, we're talking about the emotional presence of your parents or caregivers. They were there for you emotionally. So we talk about families, you know, where everything was provided, but nobody ever hugged, nobody ever expressed a feeling. I remember part of my own family, my cousin saying that her parents sent her to a room because she had a feeling. It's like, you know, Sarah, you have a feeling, go to your room. So it's sort of there's a lack of emotional content, and mostly there's a lack of what we call emotional attunement, which means the parents are connected emotionally. And so everything can look fine, but there's this element missing that sometimes people even don't even know it's missing until they sort of get perspective and start to look at it. But so there's a lot there. But even if it's only neglect, it can have a tremendous impact. But I think that normal thing is, most times it's not so normal. So the whys are important. We do explore the causes because of the root causes. And if it's trauma, I might say in the intensive, it's pretty early to start trauma work. We do a lot of the skills that will help people in trauma, but you're talking a longer term process. But we certainly do that, all the assessment and the preparation for that in the intensive for sure. And you know, I think part of the problem too, and I relate to this as well, nobody's helping me. I was unable to receive help. You know, as an addict, I wasn't ready to receive it or able to. And looking back, there were many hands that were offered to me before I was able to grab one, which saved my life. But I could have done that years earlier. Tammy?
And I was thinking, even the whys come in layers. You know, I've been around a longer time, and it was within the last, I don't know, 5 years that more was revealed. And honestly, that book I just held up, Neglect the Silent Abuser, I read that book. I got an early draft of it, and something from my childhood that I would have never been able to name, and it hit me between the eyes. And I was just like, wow. Now, if I'd had to know that early on, I'd be dead, because, you know, I wouldn't have made it. Understanding that there's stuff going on, that, you know, that wasn't our fault. How we learned to cope with it, you know, we did the best we could. But then how do we deal with things now, really is what makes it different. But I've had so many people that, you know, like, if I just knew why, well, if you could go read a book and figure it all out, you know, there wouldn't be, we wouldn't have a treatment center. You know, you just read one book and poof, you know, you'd be all better. That isn't how this works. It's complicated and messy, and getting the right help, you know, being willing to, so our clinical director, you know, has shared, tell the truth and tell it faster. I mean, that's what we say at our treatment program, because we know addicts lie. So it isn't uncommon, and it's always grades of truth. But the sad part is they're lying to themselves the most. You know, like, some of us will believe the lies for a while, but they're lying to themselves, and it's tragic because they're the ones that really bear the brunt. Like I mentioned earlier, it's like they're living in this little tiny circle, preserving this with claw marks, and they're missing out on the really good stuff of life. So we have time for one more question, and it's really more of a comment, and it is, I wish there was a wonderful and affordable program for female love addicts. Me too. It's a struggle. I did hear about one resource, and I'm checking into them as far as women go, but unfortunately, most of the programs that I know out there, I can't recommend. So it's challenging. I wish so too. Hopefully one of these days there'll be a Seeking Integrity program for women, but not yet. So but I can help you. So I mean, like I've got some resources. I've got some people to do some private intensives and things. So, reach out to me if I can be of help. Okay. Dr. David, it was lovely to spend some
Yeah,
time
always
with
fun to
you
think with you.
again.
Thank you.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
yeah. So
great.
thank you all for showing up. And let's see. Dr. David will be back on next week with Scott, and we've got lots more in between. So, and one of the things we didn't mention is your Tuesday night chemsex group on intherooms.com. So
Yes.
that's a really important resource. So
Right. Every fellowship, and it really deals with the people who use alcohol and drugs with sex in an addictive way. And it's really a popular, great meeting on In the Rooms, 8 o'clock Eastern, 5 Pacific. Yeah.
check it out. Thank you all. Bye, Dr.
Thanks,
David.
Tammy. Bye-bye. Take care.